Twin V-drive shaft diesels, couple of 370 horsepower Yanmars on this one. Bow and a stern thruster on what is possibly one of the most beautiful boats that you can fit into 36 feet. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Toy Marine, the Toy 36. There's also a 39, looks the same as this, but with outboards, obviously a little bit longer at the back. So that's also on my channel page if you're interested. So I want you to use this video to understand whether the inboard shaft diesels or possibly the outboards with a little bit higher cruising speed is going to be the best boat for you. And we're just going to run her through her paces and try and bring you along for the ride as to what it would be like to operate one of these for a day out on the water. Feeling quite cool. I just freaking love looking at this thing from the drone. It's so sexy. Look like a rock star and drive like a rock star. Okay, conditions today, guys. We've got up to or over 20 knots sort of bulleting down from the mountains today, so it's an offshore wind, so we're going to have at times with the wind into the wind a little bit. We have this short sharp wind chop, and then we're going to be in the wind shadow of these mountains, so we're going to have a nice little variation of conditions. So it's a V-drive shaft with Yanmar 370 horsepower, so weight distribution, if you're comparing this boat against the outboard powered version, you've obviously got the engines on the back versus engines more in the middle of the boat. It's going to be a difference. We're also going to really notice the torque when we're doing slow speed maneuverability. But right now, I'm just going to get the boat up to speed. Enjoy the views off our starboard bow because it's bloody beautiful and it's got an interesting history. Aldo was just explaining to me this village, which we're going to reach at the end of the video, is a beautiful old fishing town that he's been visiting for well over 60 years, and it's a stunning location. So Twin 370 is just going to wind up the speed. I'm coming through 2,000 revs. I'm going to go straight up to full speed because I suspect a lot of you are going to want to know what the speed differential is when compared to the outboard. So I'm going to do that straight away, and then I'm going to slow down to more of a cruising speed. So coming up through 3,100 revs, the boat's really lurching up onto the plane there, and I've got 3/4 trim tab down. I am not in flat water, not even close, and accelerating through 3,300 revs, 28 knots. I'm going to raise my trim tabs, going downwind at the moment, getting out of the wind affected area into some protected water. I see one diver in the water, so I'm going to go wide of him. Going to keep half trim tab down while I'm in these waves, and now I'm going to go full throttle, 3,700 revs, 30 knots and climbing. Fuel consumption 142 total, 3,800 revs, entering more flat water now, 3,850 revs, 32 knots, probably get 33 out of this in flat water, which is what we do not have today. So let's bring it back to what I believe is going to be a happy cruise speed on this one. Got to find those moorings. There we are. Not supposed to go inside them during summer. 3,400 revs, giving me 29 knots at 100 litres consumption. And then if I come down to 3,000, the boat feels really happy there. And 3,100, I'm seeing 26 knots, and I'm just going to drop that speed again, doing a little bit of navigation. There are people in the water and on the water. 2,980, let's just sit there for a little bit. We're going to have to pay attention to some of these boats. I've got a fuel consumption, 80 litres total. I've got a speed return of hovering around 24 to 24.5 knots. I have half to 3/4 trim tab down, and I can remain seated, but also transitioning to standing at this helm, super comfortable. This little teak footrest is a great position to just elevate yourself up a little bit and just increase your line of sight quite happily. I've got my windscreen wiper operation here, which you will need to use on these boats, and I got my trim tab immediately forward of the throttles. Now I can do single lever on this one and operate it like this in a seaway. However, this is quite a predictable hull. You've got quite a predictable motion, and you feel the displacement, I suppose I'm going to say, in the right places, because it feels like a nicely well balanced hull. So what I mean by that is you don't get these awkward jerks or lurches coming off waves that are going to cause you to accidentally accelerate. People in the water, yachts maneuvering, beautiful village coming into view on starboard, and a wonderful little cave. Don't look too closely because I think that's a nudie beach. And I'm just going to maintain this speed with a safe distance away from the boats and the swimmers, maintaining 24 knots. Going to run down this beach. Next observation, nicely balanced. The vibrations on this inboard V-drive shaft, you can't really notice them. So it's almost on par with the outboards, which is unusual. A lot of these diesel boats that I drive, you do feel a noticeable vibration. Not the case on this boat. Very, very smooth, and the noise levels are also not intrusive. So the engine bay is well insulated. I think I see a dive flag up ahead, all clear around. Going to prepare for a slightly fast turn before we get close to any swimmers. Turning to port and starting to turn now. Going to increase my speed. Moderate heel angle. I'm going to increase power. Not aggressive. So you will notice a difference in the turning circle on this shaft drive compared to the outboards, because the outboards should give you a slightly tighter and more sporty feel, but this is still pretty good. Okay, so I'm now maintaining 3,200 revs. I might actually just bring that back to 3,150 or thereabouts at 26 knots. I'm seeing a fuel consumption of 90 to 93 litres approximately now. I'm going into the wind now, and I've got waves on my bow, so I'm going to drop the nose and do full trim tab down. So yeah, the vibrations are really, really minimal on this, and the noise is totally manageable, particularly when you are doing slower cruising speeds, which we will do later on in this video. We're going to take her through some maneuvers, and you can basically do a bit of this and clear sight lines out. A design or a style of hull like this will raise her bow a bit more than, say, something like an adventure boat that you've seen on my channel. So that is to be expected, but you can still trim it as such that you've got good sight lines. Also, driving like this is quite comfy and cool. You feel pretty cool. And then if you want to do more active driving, you can do this or this, and it's all quite possible. But I think sort of hovering around that 24 knot cruising speed. I've got a yacht up ahead. I'm going to let him go inside, and then I'll go behind him, is probably the happy place. So let's bring that back again, and then we'll play with some other speeds. And I'm going to do another turn in a second. So 2,900 revs gives me a speed of 23.8 to 23.9 SOG. I'm going to go behind this yacht, and then in between him and the next one, when I've got the space, I'll just whip it around, and then we'll head back to the village. Okay, that's good. And I'll do as tight as I possibly can there. A couple of waves, gusts of wind coming off the mountain. Beautiful. And I'm going to go behind these guys so I don't freak anyone out. Leave a safe distance. So now if I just dial back the speed just a tad, so 2,750 revs, I'm still getting 21 odd knots there. I've got full trim tab down. I can go back to 3/4 to half trim tab. There we go. Nice quick response on these Bennett trim tabs there. So you will be using them, and they're going to be useful. 21 to 22 knots, a fuel consumption of just under 70 litres. So if you budget somewhere between that 70 to 90 litre per hour fuel consumption. That's going to be on point. You'll see 21 to 26 knots cruise, and then you can bump that up to a high 20s fast cruise, as we just saw, and flat out at 33 knots. But she just feels great at about 2,900 to 3,100 revs, and you will be getting places burning considerably less fuel than the outboards and feeling quite cool. I just freaking love looking at this thing from the drone. It's so sexy. And when you see it next to this beautifully colourful village, it is the bee's knees. I love it. Okay, I've got a little bit of water on the windscreen there, so I can dull that down. I've got the freshwater wash, comes from the water tanks for the windscreen wipers, and I've got individual button controls just there. Lovely. So what we're going to do now is find a protected place. We will have a play with the anchor. We're going to have a play with the close quarters manoeuvring. We'll attempt to find somewhere that can put it into perspective for you, because there is a great difference when manoeuvring a shaft. You think about all that water movement forward and aft with big propellers attached to a straight shaft, as opposed to outboard propellers. There is a difference. So obviously with an outboard, you could do things like skyhook, and the technology does have its benefits as well, but you need to be the judge as to how you're going to use the boat, where you're going to keep the boat, will you be winterizing the boat, and are you going to be going up to sandbars and beaches? It's those sorts of questions that you need to ask yourself as to whether a design like this is going to be best for your boat life, or whether you then want to consider the slightly longer but a little bit more high speed potential outboard option. So that's really a question for yourself, but this is super smooth. This is, you will, if you like to go and drive a classic car or ride a motorbike, and you enjoy the thrill that you get out of that machine on a Saturday or a Sunday, this will be another machine to add to that list, that you will just be smiling from ear to ear when you finish your Saturday or Sunday morning blast, because obviously you're going to appreciate all the looks, but it is a pleasurable thing to drive. Even though we had a lot of that short, sharp stuff there, she's got enough V carry all the way aft that she kind of eats it up, and we're all plenty protected in here. I even have the middle window cracked open to one position, so I've got air coming through, and we didn't get any water penetrating into the cabin, so we're comfortable. So now I think it's time to go and run you through the close quarters manoeuvring. Stay tuned. All right, guys, we've just blasted up the beach a little bit to a beautiful little port called Finale. A nice little colourful building here, and everything's amazing. Everything's amazing. This place is just stunning. The views from these villas up here would just be incredible. But we're not here to talk about the villas. We're here to talk about the parking. And I think this is going to be one of the big differences for many of you guys, the noticeable differences between a shaft diesel and the outboards, because it is a lot more responsive in a close quarters manoeuvring situation. So I just got some exiting traffic, just going to make sure we're all on keeping to starboard. So what I have done, I have activated the bow thruster by just holding down my finger on the middle button, and I see a green light when that activates. And I can actually, because this particular boat has both bow and stern thruster, I can oscillate this like so, which we're going to do in a second, to maneuver the boat with using both bow and stern thruster, or I can just use it top or bottom to use one at a time. So it is a little bit touchy, so if you give it too much, you will end up using both, but just we'll show you that rather than talk about it. So I've got a rudder angle indicator on my display here, which is going to be useful for a shaft drive boat, and we're going to come in alongside this fuel dock. So you've got a reference point. I'm going to stop the boat, and then I'm going to spin it using transverse thrust. So that is one throttle in forward and one in reverse. I did notice this on the 39 the other day. The displacement, okay, I'm just going to start turning the boat to starboard. The displacement is such that this boat does not get overtaken by the wind all that much. So now I'm just, see that? Feel the power. Feel the control. This is a beautiful boat to come into a marina, look like a rock star, and drive like a rock star. So I've got heaps of power to play with. I would not be afraid to just come in anywhere, super windy, and give this thing a little bit of juice and maneuver it as I see fit. So now I can stop that rate of turn. See that? Feel that control. Now, we also have the thrusters. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to just back the boat up to this dock to simulate you picking up some friends. So what I can do using both thrusters, see that? That just now allows me to control the boat in the same manner. Boom, boom, there we go. I've just done a power overload. And in the same manner as I did with the shafts, it allows me to maneuver the boat. But it also, as I have now, a crosswind, if I needed to, I can keep the boat in line and maintain position if I need to allow for the wind by doing both thrusters to windward. That just keeps me in the same position. I've got the door open. I can see she tracks beautifully well in reverse. And then I can actually just come in and pick someone up pretty much by myself. If I was coming into a dock, this would be a better boat to do it on than the outboard. So see that? See how close we can get? See how much control we have? It's really, really good. With that swim platform, checking all clear. Now I'm going to drive out of here. And you can use the thrusters, but you really don't need to. You can, got a kayaker behind me, you can really just give it some. Here we go, all clear for the kayaker, and the boat will turn. So that's just a real help. And using that bow and stern thruster when you need to tickle it up with a little bit of a crosswind marina situation, when you're backing into your berth and you get a big gust and you feel the need, that's when you can really touch it up. And also when you're just leaving the dock or approaching a dock and a wave catches you or a gust of wind catches you, you can refine it as opposed to having to go out and redo the whole situation. This will stop you needing to do that. But as I said before, she's got quite a bit of weight down low and in the water, so she doesn't bounce around and blow around as much as so many of the lighter day boats that I do test on this channel that are more on the water as opposed to in the water, which is the sensation I get with this one, especially having these diesels in the middle of the boat there. You do feel that weight distribution in the places where it needs to be, basically. Okay, time to drop the anchor and see how that all goes. All right, guys, we've anchored the boat. Anchoring is pretty straightforward. You just have this, I guess, remote control, which you activate power and then down and up on this one. So you can go and do it from the bow or do it from back here. Lots of stainless steel, beautifully made, protection up on the bow. And, you know, the little bit of swing on the anchor as it goes down. So it is good to have it there and protect the hull, which it does very nicely. Plenty of chain. It looks like 8mm gal to a stainless chain. And we're holding right now in about 11.8 meters of water, as you can see. But before we move forward, and I will show you the anchor locker in a second, just a real pleasure to drive. Just super nice. Everything's sort of where it needs to be. Trim tabs there, wiper controls there, throttle is comfortable, your Yanmar diagnostics there. Your start up and shut down is pretty straightforward. You've just got services, engine, genset battery here. You can also parallel from here. So you just fire on your house and you crank, and then you just do power to both Yanmars, and then you power and then start stop digitally like so. I mentioned before you can do the single lever. All super easy, logical. We have an autopilot on this one, which I tested as well. Works same as you. They're the same units that you see in a lot of sailing boats. Excuse me, coughing. And then the bow and stern thruster, as we just saw. Let's go forward and finish this video in the beautiful Italian September sun. This place is a paradise. And holding on when you go forward, because there aren't any safety rails, because that wouldn't be cool enough in Italy. And then you just lean down, hold on there, and make your way to the center line. I'll quickly show you this anchor locker. They can do this with gas struts And so if you wish, but a lot of the Italians just like it to be able to open it like so. We've got the Lofrans, we've got the chain, and there is a freshwater wash. Actually, it might be raw water wash, sorry, built into there to clean your chain when it's coming up. So yeah, guys, how do you compare this boat, or what do you compare this boat to? Well, there's probably a few obvious modern classics. I will talk about this more in the Patreon because there's not a lot. I see a sector of you maybe coming out of luxury, potentially high performance day boats, and another sector of you maybe adding this to your collection of beautiful boats, and it's going to suit both categories very, very well. Excuse me, coughing. Do you go for the outboards? Do you go for the inboards? That's going to be a question for you. I will touch on that more in the Patreon, but the obvious thing is the cruising speeds and the top speeds. And then, do you want to have something like a skyhook available to you? Is that going to be useful in whatever part of the world you berth your boat? Or is that really, to be fair, super easy maneuverability with the shafts and the extra torque, arguably easier to maneuver, even though you can't hold station? Is that of more benefit to you? And is that beautiful big transom important to you as well? So just think about those points. Have a chat to me on the Patreon if you want to talk in more detail, and check out this other boat coming up on the screen right now, which also could be of interest to you. Go up, have a look at that one, do the comparisons, love you lots. And thank you once again for making opportunities like this available to me to present to you. If it wasn't for you guys subscribing, commenting, and talking to your dealers and the factories, when I go and say g'day to these blokes in these foreign countries, many of them wouldn't allow me to get on their beautiful boats. But it's thanks to you guys that I get this opportunity to bring it to you. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I'm having a lot of fun doing it. See ya. Well, I'm also going to suggest get the V10 400s. As fun and capable and zippy it is with the 300s, it's perfectly fine. If you've had a go fast, high powered center console day boat and you are just used to the area of operations that you work within and the cruising speeds,